Okay, it's up right now. All right, 1 second. I'm almost ready. Okay, I'm ready to start whenever you are. Okay. So, let me just make sure. Is that working correctly? Yes, it is. Good. All right, we're good.
Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is April 15th, 2018. I'm your host, Enzo Quesada, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Bobby Hester.
Hello, everyone.
And this week, Bobby, we got quite a lot of stuff to talk about.
It was a very big week.
So much stuff has happened, which, when we compile the show, we keep, a Google document of all the stuff, and the list wasn't long. But the stuff that we're talking about does take some time to explain, so we should just get into it, I think, this week. We should start off with the biggest thing that happened this week, and that is the airstrikes in Syria.
Yeah, so much like a repeat of last year, although this time a lot bigger.
It's actually pretty much, to the date, like a year between both events. But yeah, we sent in 103 missiles into Syria in response to alleged chemical attacks in Duma.
Yeah.
And that was done on what day?
God, that was done, I want to say, early April, like the first week of April, I believe. I forget the exact day, but, to this moment, we still don't have any evidence that Assad was actually behind it. I know the U.S. has said that they were certain that Assad's behind it. France says that they have evidence that Assad is behind it, but their evidence that they released was nothing but just a bunch of articles and whatnot.
And yet they don't show us evidence.
Yeah, no one has presented any evidence in actual form. And keep in mind, this happened, the day or just a couple of days after Trump announced that we were going to be, starting to withdraw our troops from Syria.
We have a couple thousand in Syria.
It really makes you think that, Assad is not a dumb guy in his fight against the people that are fighting against his government. He knows that chemical weapons are not something to play around with. He knows that the response from the outside world will be, essentially what it was, if not even more, to what actually happened. So why would a guy like that decide to just gas his own people, kill, 45 of them is the number that's being thrown around right now?
Something like that.
Just days after the U.S. says we're going to retreat, which knowing that would trigger them to come back and, have more of a global response to your regime does not make any sense to me, especially the fact that, the people that were the first ones on the ground talking about it were the white helmets, and we know their track record for, being honest and faking things. I mean, there's pictures going around the internet already of people that were, supposedly injured in this gas attack or just standing there posing for pictures on the cameras.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say the entire thing was fake, but there's very little evidence to prove that this thing actually happened, let alone Assad being behind it.
No, you look at what happened last year. They released the video the White Helmets did on, the chemical attack that got us involved in the first time last year. You can go through that footage and, you can see technical glitches in their footage over and over.
Mm-hmm.
The one guy, and, I'm talking about something a year ago. You remember the footage where the guy's kind of like flopping like a fish?
Yeah.
That footage actually is clipped for him to repeat over and over to do that. They're selectively editing to make it look like something that they want to look like. They have a long history with doing this. The White Helmets are essentially Al-Qaeda because, they are trying to garner support from the West, and, they're pretty successful at this, to fight the Assad regime.
Mm-hmm.
And, just looking at the airstrikes that just happened the other day, the next morning, ISIS went on an offensive against the Syrian government.
They started that night. It was just an hour or so after the airstrikes were finished. There was a couple of ISIS groups that were attacking, I guess, government forces, if I can use that word, or it might have been the Syrian army. You know exactly what I mean when I say that.
The Syrian government.
They were attacking Syrian government forces just hours after the airstrikes had finished. And, a lot of people assume that some of the explosions that were going off were also part of the U.S. airstrikes before they realized, oh, wait a minute, that was actually rebel forces that were setting off bombs, not more airstrikes that were coming in. And so, when things get mixed together and you see a headline or a blurb or a video comes out on Twitter, you really need to look at it, analyze it, and figure out exactly, what sides are which, who's on whose side, who's fighting who, and exactly what's going on. Otherwise, you have events like what happened just the other day, where you send 103 missiles into Syria and destroy, they said we were targeting chemical weapons facilities. Thank God, the U.S. is saying there were no casualties. Russia is saying there were no casualties. There were some reports of casualties on Twitter during the airstrike, but none of those have been confirmed. The fact that Russia itself is saying that there are no casualties tends to make me believe that there are none, in fact. But also, we bombed several chemical weapons facilities. The fact that there were no casualties means that there wasn't anyone there. There are reports saying that the U.S. told the Russians in Syria, or at least the information was leaked or released to them, telling them that there's going to be a possibility of airstrikes to those facilities, which is why they got out. And if you look at some of the pictures of the airstrikes, you can see there's one picture, the entire building is just completely demolished, yet right next to it, there's a brick or like a stone wall that's built as like a barrier between that and the street. It's almost completely undamaged. When we talk about how precision these airstrikes were, they were precise. Granted, there were about 70 or so of the missiles of the 103 that we shot that were shot down. And if you're wondering exactly why that is, number one, you have to understand that when we launched 103 missiles over the course of about 45 minutes or so, it's volley fire at that point. You're just launching a ton of stuff, hoping that some of them get through.
And they have time to respond.
Exactly. I was going to say, knowing absolutely full well that both Russian and Syrian air defense systems are going to be activated, shooting those missiles down. I mean, Syrian people the very next day were cheering in the streets for the fact that they were able to shoot down, what's that, roughly 70% of the missiles that we put through?
Yeah.
It's not like these were, granted, yeah, they were precision airstrikes, but full well that if you just launch just one or two missiles, chances are they're not going to go through. It's a shotgun effect. You're just aiming and firing, hoping that, you're going to hit your target, knowing that they don't have the defense capabilities in order to shoot down everything. Something's going to get through, and that is the entire point of what we did.
Yeah. But overall, we definitely don't like what happened whatsoever. It's been very frustrating to kind of deal with this, and I don't like the sycophantic support of Donald Trump doing this, because this isn't putting America first whatsoever. Global intervention is not America first. And, the results of this attack, there hasn't been, a lot of follow-up from what happened, but, what we're potentially dealing with is not something that we want whatsoever, which is, essentially the Third World War. It could have started if these things turned out the wrong way. We have the risk of killing Russian personnel with these kind of attacks. And, Russia has already said that if we do anything of this sort, again, there is going to be repercussions. And it's not helpful. It doesn't, we have so much stuff domestically that we need to get done. Why are we putzing around in Syria pretending like this isn't going to engulf us into something worse? We understand the track record at this point on what Middle Eastern interventions end up doing to us, okay? We went through the Iraq War, and we spent trillions of dollars out there. And what did we get for it? We have nothing to show for it. Getting involved in Syria would be the same exact thing. And, Donald Trump at least knew that in the past, looking at all his old tweets. But now it's like a different person altogether. And I personally feel like he is, relenting to kind of the globalist consensus on this because of the pressure that the Mueller probe has had intensely on him this week, which it really strains him from going against the grain on things. He ran and campaigned on us not getting involved in Syria. You remember those campaign events where he said, why can't we be friends with Russia? If Assad is taking out ISIS, why don't we leave him alone? That's what we want.
Yeah, and like you said, you can look at his old tweets from 2013, literally saying, just don't get involved in Syria. I don't want to start World War III, or, don't start World War III. And so it seems like a complete reversal, but at the same time, I've seen so much freak out, especially from people on the right and Trump supporters, saying things along the lines of, like, I can't support Trump anymore, I'm off the Trump train, I'm abandoning support. And it's like, yeah, I understand your frustration, and it is a very big deal, but at the same time, why are you completely abandoning what's going on? I mean, we have an entire show that we're going to talk about mostly good things that are happening because of policies that Trump is putting forth. Are you going to completely abandon that over, something like this? And, let's actually look at exactly what happened here. Nobody was killed. We destroyed empty buildings. Russia and Syria were, allegedly warned prior, or at least had advanced knowledge that something might occur. And let's face it, does Russia really want to start a war with the United States if they have the choice? Absolutely not. And so
it'd be costly for both sides.
It would be costly for both sides. They used the whole mutually assured destruction thing in the back during the Cold War. It wouldn't reach that point, but the whole point does still stand. Neither side wants to fight each other. I still want us to get out of Syria. Thankfully, the U.S. has said that there are no further plans for any more airstrikes or action, saying that we don't want to get involved in the civil war that's going on there. Now, I know Nikki Haley has some comments that we're going to get to here in a second regarding that. But at the same time, it appears, and they've made, comments and statements, the White House and Trump himself has said, this is a one-off thing. We just did it in response, don't do this sort of stuff again. And frankly, now that I forget what the exact wording or the name of the organization is that was actually going to go into Duma and investigate whether or not chemical weapons were used. It's like OPES, something like that. I don't know. I forget. I should have written it down. But they're now currently, as we're recording this right now, they just went in this morning or yesterday night to go and search it and actually do their own investigation.
Do you mean the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons?
Yeah.
That's the UN organization that deals with chemical weapons.
Yeah, they're now on the ground searching it right now, so who knows exactly what they're going to come across.
But, there was, and I don't remember the name of the lady that did this, but the Pentagon, had a press conference on this.
Yeah.
And the journalists were, pressing pretty hard, and they said, why didn't you wait for, the report back from the OPCW on the region before you striked first? And they don't have an answer.
No,
they said, they weren't allowed in the area. But, the OPCW landed in Syria on Saturday after the attacks, and Assad has allowed them to go into the region to test.
Mm-hmm.
He has nothing to hide. Okay, so this whole event was done under deceptive means.
Absolutely.
It's been lied to the public about this event, and they don't expect any pushback to the degree where they even have to justify what they do. And that's what really gets me mad, because, like I said, the potential for detrimental effects from this attack were so great. What's the risk worth? Okay, chemical weapons being used in a war zone, yeah, that's bad. But we weren't under attack.
No.
Syria has never attacked the United States. They aren't a threat to us. And I just don't understand why we're supposed to care about intervening only when it's chemical weapons. This is a civil war that's been going on since 2011. Thousands of people have died. Why does it matter what weapons are used? Why do we have to risk getting involved in a war because chemical weapons were used?
And it's a civil war, too.
Yeah.
It's not like Syria is fighting Lebanon or fighting Iraq or fighting Israel or something. It's a civil war within Syria.
Yeah.
Granted, there are elements like, ISIS or Al-Qaeda or different groups that get involved in it. But the fighting for the Syrian civil war is in Syria. Okay, that is their own problem to deal with. We do not need to get involved.
And, what we did, it violates international law, and, you can argue the grounds of constitutionality of what's been done.
Yeah, I want to bring up that here in a second, too.
And it's just like, what was it all for? What do we have to show for what we've done? I can't point to anything whatsoever. It's just been a waste of time.
And I want to bring up the whole constitutionality of what happened. It's amazing, if the Constitution says that the United States cannot declare war without Congress, and then there's the whole thing with the War Powers Act that says that, the president can authorize military action, but has to, get congressional approval within like 90 days or 60 days of it.
I think it's 60 days.
Yeah, I think it's 60 days as well. There was absolutely no talk about that from the left during the Obama years, and even during the Bush years, it was, there was an anti-war effort, but in terms of that being their argument, wasn't that strong. Yeah. And yet, after this strike, every single mainstream left, every Democrat was coming out there, every neocon Republican, well, actually, not really them, they were coming out in support of it, but especially a lot of, the more libertarian type Republicans that are out there, were all coming out saying, like, Trump can't do this without the authorization of Congress, this is unconstitutional. Where were you people when, every other president was doing this? I understand that
when we invaded Libya.
Yeah, where were you when this was in Libya? Where were you when, people were doing airstrikes in Yemen? Where was this? Where was it at all? Where were you, when we were doing airstrikes last year against Syria?
It's interesting that you bring up Yemen, because it shows like a very strong hypocrisy on the part of like American foreign policy. Mm-hmm. We have intervened in Syria because of supposed chemical weapons attacks, but the Saudis are attacking, Yemeni civilians all the time, and we do nothing.
Every day.
We just let them do it. And, there's been questionable acts used with chemical weapons out there. There's been instances where the Israelis have used white phosphorus against Palestinians and people in Lebanon, but we don't attack Israel for doing so.
Yeah, you don't see us launching carpet bombs over Jerusalem.
We just have this hypocrisy where if you're our supposed ally, we let you do the stuff that, we striked Syria for doing. And in many cases, they do much worse things. Mm-hmm. So, do you want to...
I want to say a couple more things. And in regards to what you're saying about, other countries using chemical weapons, that's documented proof that those countries have done that.
Israel has documented proof that they've used white phosphorus.
The chemical attack in Syria last year, the chemical attack in Syria this year, no proof that Assad was behind either of those. In fact, even proof that those things didn't even happen. They were faked. I mean, this one this year supposedly was chlorine gas is what they're saying. Yet there's videos of people like running through it in the streets. You do not run through chlorine gas that's in the air like that with no equipment on you at all. You just don't do that.
Or like last year, they said it was sarin gas was used, and then they showed the white helmet footage where people are just using rubber gloves to like rubber gloves you use for washing dishes to try and clean people. Like that wouldn't work. It would burn through that. It's just none of this stuff is believable, and it's just like, why do we care what goes on over there? It's on the exact opposite side of the world. It has nothing to do with us. Why are we invading Syria, and undermining their their national sovereignty?
Exactly. But I would say the last thing before we move on to the next thing that we're going to talk about is, if you're in Trump's position, where in the past you have said that you don't want to get involved, you don't want to get involved in Syria, you don't want to invade Syria or start World War III regarding Syria, but you have all these people surrounding you that are pressuring you to do things, knowing that, granted, you have the ability to say no, yet, especially what you're saying with the whole Mueller investigation, everything that's going on, if you had to make an action that was a big, bold thing, but had, I guess what could I use as the word? The least amount of risk involved for what you're doing, then it would be exactly what we did. It would be bomb some empty buildings that's no one there, that's been abandoned, a one-time, one-off thing, get it done, get it over. And U.S. has said it's a one-time thing. Now, if they go back on that and they get more involved, then we'll criticize them. And, am I off the Trump train? No. Am I disappointed? Hell yes, I'm disappointed. And I'm angry about what happened.
Yeah.
But am I going to say that, my support for the president is gone? Absolutely not. There's so many more good things. I just hate the foreign policy that we're doing. That's pretty much what I have to say.
Yeah.
If there was a way to do it, that was the way to do it.
Moving on, though, to something you mentioned earlier, and that is Nikki Haley and what she's said in regards to the intervention. She has now said that the U.S. is not withdrawing from Syria. She says that the U.S. has 3 different aims at the moment: to ensure no chemical weapons are used in a way that poses a risk to U.S. interests, which...
It's a very vague
what does
statement.
That mean? Yeah. Ensure ISIS is defeated, which, why are we fighting the people fighting ISIS?
And
then?
plus,
That doesn't help.
ISIS has already lost over 99% of their territory.
They don't have territory in Iraq anymore. They just have limited territory in Syria.
Yeah, and so, the fight against ISIS in Syria is very, very close to being finished. If it weren't for the fact that, a lot of ISIS elements are still fighting against the Assad regime, not under the ISIS flag,
Yeah. And then the last aim is to have a good vantage point over what Iran is doing. But my thing is, Syria is allies with Iran. Why are we getting mad that the Syrian government allows Iranian troops in Syria? This is for the Syrians to decide. It's not up to us. We don't have a place to get mad about that from. It's just so weird to me. I don't know. But she says that the U.S. main goal is to see American troops come home, but we're not going to leave until we accomplish those 3 things, and that we're also going to impose more sanctions on Syria.
Now, in this regard, it says the U.S. main goal is to see troops come home, but not going to leave until we've accomplished those things. That means that we could indefinitely be there. However, I really, unless there is some sort of big, bold response from Russia against this, I don't know. I just don't see the thing escalating too much from where it is currently.
Yeah.
That goes against what a lot of people on the right are thinking, but I just don't see it. Unless something happens, I just don't see it. I just think that we're just going to be there and kind of stalemate like we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's anything to suggest any more movement beyond it. I mean, we might be completely wrong come next week, but as the moment, nothing's happening too much.
Yeah, World War III has not started yet, folks, as much as you people like to freak out on Twitter about it. It hasn't happened yet.
Do you want to move on to the Trump attorney stuff now?
Yeah, let's move back to some domestic stuff here. The first thing that we have in terms of what's been going on, I guess you could say, in the United States, in the Trump administration, is the FBI has raided the office of Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen. They raided his New York City office earlier this week as part of a referral from the Mueller probe. Now, you have to understand exactly why they did this. They were apparently looking for records relating to the Access Hollywood Pussygate tape, and also information regarding the payment to Stormy Daniels that happened right before the election, where she was paid $130,000 as part of a non-disclosure agreement. They say that's a violation of campaign finance law or something along those lines. I just don't see it. The media likes to talk up the whole Stormy Daniels thing, but everyone else just does not seem to care one bit whatsoever. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is the fact that the warrant also covered emails and documents that could reveal Cohen's private communications with President Trump, which is why President Trump on Tuesday tweeted that attorney-client privilege is dead. Because if they have access to things that Trump has talked to with his personal attorney, stuff that should be covered under attorney-client privilege, and if the Mueller probe uses any of that to try to go after Trump, you just need to fire Mueller and Rosenstein right then and there. I mean, there is no reason to keep them around. If they're going to violate attorney-client privilege, especially with the President of the United States being one of the parties involved there, that's nothing more than a mutiny.
And the crazy thing is, the Mueller probe, I mean, its scope is kind of vague, but it's supposedly supposed to be, the Trump campaign in collusion with Russians.
Yeah.
But that's nothing of what they've gone after in this raid.
That has nothing to do with Trump paying a porn star that he had sex with a decade ago to, keep quiet as part of a non-disclosure agreement, which everyone signed, that has nothing to do with Trump being involved in Russia whatsoever. And so, yeah, it is an overstep of Mueller's bounds, especially for him to, be the one that has the referral, which led to the FBI raiding the office.
And if Trump has, like, any sort of insider knowledge that he was trying to, keep to himself amongst him and his lawyer...
Which he should.
Which it is his right to have. That's just, that's out the window now. Because the FBI just went and raided his attorney, which is, why I said... The pressure on this Mueller probe is really increasing right now. They're getting very, very desperate, especially with talks about firing Rod Rosenstein being in the news so much as of late.
And, that was especially the last couple of days, the week before the Syrian airstrikes, that was the thing that everyone thought was going to happen this weekend, was Rosenstein getting fired. A lot of people talk about how Trump usually makes a big decision in the quiet after he makes a big decision in the public to try to, distract from it. A lot of people thought that Trump might fire Rosenstein on Saturday after the airstrikes on Friday. Obviously, that did not happen. There are some people that are coming out and said that, there are no plans to fire Rosenstein or Mueller. But, obviously, we're just going to have to wait to see what happens in those regards. But Rosenstein definitely needs to go. Obviously, Trump has the power and the right to fire either one of them. But if you're going to get rid of anyone, I feel like Rosenstein at this point is probably the one that's going to play better for Trump. Because if he tries to fire Mueller, obviously, he has the right to do that. But we know exactly what the leftist response is going to be if he tries to do that.
It's going to be crazy either way if you touch Rosenstein or Mueller.
At this point, I hate to say it, the best course of action might just be let them continue what they're doing. Because it's obvious that they don't have anything on Trump regarding Russia. Otherwise, they wouldn't be raiding the office to look for information regarding,
They're just looking for anything.
They're looking, yeah, exactly. They are looking for anything that they can possibly slap a criminal charge on in order to get Trump out of office. Yeah. And that's why if they do decide to move forward anything that's not related to Russia, Trump needs to fire them. And he needs to fire them sooner rather than later. Granted, I can understand, that the talk of should he fire him now, should he wait till after the midterms. There's a good debate on whether or not to do that, at whatever time. I would like to see it done sooner than later, especially, if Republicans lose in the midterms, then yeah, go ahead and fire Mueller. Just get rid of him.
Yeah, at that point it doesn't matter.
Because, if you lose in the midterms, they're going to bring up an impeachment vote and they're going to do it, and you're going to be out of office by 2019. And so that's definitely something we do not want to see happen. But at the same time, if you fire Mueller before the midterms, does that lead people to, does that fire up the Democrat base and get them out to vote? It's just one of those things that could go back and forth. But, it's obvious that the Mueller probe has overstepped its grounds and it needs to be stopped. And something like this with this office raid just proves that.
Yeah. Let's move on now to some stuff in regards to executive orders this week. This week, Trump signed an executive order on work requirements for welfare. On Tuesday, President Trump signed in private an executive order to strengthen work requirements for public assistance and other welfare programs, such as food stamps, cash, and housing assistance programs. According to the 2015 Department of Agricultural data, 44% of SNAP households, which SNAP is, food stamps, SNAP households have someone in their family earning money. The administration has also looked into work requirements for Medicaid. The order gives various cabinet secretaries 90 days to review the programs their agencies offer and recommend possible changes. So, generally, I think this is good because, as we've seen, and we've talked about this many times in the program, when you put work requirements on welfare programs, you see a bunch of people jump off.
Yeah, Georgia did that. They saw like a 90-something%, or not 90-something, but they saw a very significant decrease.
I think it was like 70% or something.
Yeah, I think Tennessee.
It was months ago.
I think Tennessee or West Virginia also implemented something like that, and they've both seen significant declines in the number of people that are on these programs. And these programs are set up. You don't want people to be on them forever.
You don't want dependency.
The entire point of these programs is to say, hey, you're in a bad spot, let's help you out till you can get back on your feet and then be independent again. You get dependent on it and then you essentially live off of it. That is not what you want people to be doing. That's a waste of our money, our taxpayer money, and frankly, why should you even keep doing this?
And, why should we be helping people that won't even bother to help themselves?
Exactly.
So, yeah, some good stuff on that front. Another thing Trump said this week is in regards to marijuana legalization on the state level. Late Wednesday night, President Trump called Colorado Senator Cory Gardner that despite what the Department of Justice has said, the marijuana industry in Colorado will not be targeted. In a statement on Friday, Gardner said the following. Since the campaign, President Trump has consistently supported states' rights to decide for themselves how to best deal with marijuana. Late Wednesday night, I received a commitment from the president that the DOJ's rescission of the Cole memo will not impact Colorado's legal marijuana industry. Furthermore, President Trump has assured me that he will support a federalism-based legislative solution to fix this states' right issue once and for all.
So he's definitely going against, some of the things that Attorney General Jeff Sessions has made, regarding marijuana and how to best deal with it with different states' rights versus the government 10th Amendment issues. I'm happy with this decision. I think that is a 10th Amendment issue. If states want to legalize it in their own states, let them do it. That's something that the United States government should not be cracking down on for what individual states want to do. So I'm happy with this.
And, it wasn't a big part of Trump's platform when he was running for president, but he had always said that I just think that this is a federalist issue that should be, relented to the states. Mm-hmm. So good stuff there. And obviously we will support marijuana legalization.
Yes.
Moving on now. This week, Trump pardoned Scooter Libby.
Yeah, so President Trump has pardoned Scooter Libby, who is the former aide to Vice President Dick Cheney, who was ensnared in the Valerie Plame affair during the Bush administration. Now, here's a little background as to, exactly what happened. In 2003, a New York Times op-ed written by CIA official Valerie Plame's husband, Joseph Wilson, said that Wilson doubted a U.S. claim that Saddam Hussein sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa after he made a trip to Niger to investigate. Journalist Robert Novak published a column a week later, publicly identifying Plame as the one who suggested sending her husband to Niger. This was classified information at the time and was given to him by State Department official Richard Armitage. In June 2007, Libby was convicted of perjury, obstruction of justice, and making false statements after a criminal investigation into the leak, but no one was actually ever charged for the leak itself. President Bush commuted Libby's sentence in July of 2007. So essentially what happened was Libby he lied to investigators over something that, let's face it, he never should have been charged with anything in this regard. He was not the one who publicly identified who Valerie Plame was. It was this journalist who published it based on information given to them by a State Department official who should not have been giving out classified information. Now, you can say what you want about whether or not you think Scooter Libby was a good guy or the people involved were good people, but, when it really comes down to it, Scooter Libby, in this regard, didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, so, I don't think he's a good guy, but I don't think he did anything wrong either. So, it is what it is.
And like we said, President Bush commuted a sentence, so he never actually saw any jail time for, being charged with anything. So, essentially it's a formalization of a process that was started a long time ago. So, I'm fine with that. I don't really care.
Yeah, and to round out the top of the news this week, we got another explosive thing being reported, and that is the Inspector General has released a report on Andrew McCabe, who was recently fired from the head of the FBI. The Justice Department's Inspector General Michael Horowitz found that former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, quote, lacked candor on 4 occasions when discussing the disclosure of information for a Wall Street Journal article about the FBI's Clinton Foundation investigation. In addition, the IG determined that McCabe was not authorized to disclose the existence of the investigation because it was not within the department's public interest exception for disclosing ongoing investigations. The IG said that the disclosure to the Wall Street Journal was made, quote, in a manner designed to advance his personal interests at the expense of the department leadership. The instances the IG cited were McCabe's conversations with federal investigators and also with then FBI Director James Comey in October of 2016. The reports from Horowitz, which was sent to Capitol Hill on Friday ahead of its expected public release, formed the basis of McCabe's firing last month by Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
So this is good news. You know, we all knew that McCabe was not a good guy, and this the IG report here confirms that. It confirms that he was not authorized to disclose information that he did disclose. You know, whether or not you wanted to define that exactly as leaking, you probably could describe that as leaking. But yeah, that $500,000 he raised in that GoFundMe for his legal defense is going to be put to good use here, especially, you know, once this report actually becomes public, and then the possibility of charges starting to be filed against these people, which frankly I hope happens.
Yeah, McCabe is definitely one of the worst, people involved. And the stuff happening around, the Hillary Clinton investigation, we were talking earlier, Comey said that he pretty much did it for political reasons.
He did. He said that, it came out that he said that he believed that Hillary Clinton was going to win, and that did, what's the word I'm looking for? That did impact how he handled the investigation into the whole email scandal and whatnot. Meaning he thought she was gonna win, meaning he would keep his job or get a new job within her administration. Meaning, yeah, there is some bias there. Things were not handled properly.
I just wanted to touch on one thing that House Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte said in regards to the report. And that is that he thinks that the decision to fire McCabe was the correct one. Quote, according to the Inspector General report, Mr. McCabe repeatedly lied under oath about the disclosure of information to a reporter. In doing so, he not only violated FBI policy, but he may have committed a federal crime. So, Trump tweeted about this kind of in grand fashion.
Oh, he sent like 5 tweets this morning about it.
Yeah. And McCabe's lawyer retweeted all of it and said, we will be using, thank you for providing even more material for the defamation suit. We are actively considering filing against you and your colleagues. Stay tuned. So this is, we could have expected this. This is going to a court case. This is going to take quite a while to resolve. But, just more evidence on what we kind of already known for many months now. Moving on from there, do you want to talk about the economy, Bobby?
Yes, I do. We have one story in economics this week, and that is Trump has ordered a full review of post office finances. President Trump issued an executive order Thursday to create a task force to examine the financial soundness of the U.S. Post Office after Trump has accused Amazon of getting cheaper package delivery expenses by abusing the USPS services. The task force will conduct a full evaluation within 120 days and will examine, quote, the expansion and pricing of the package delivery market, the decline in mail volume, and the monopoly, quote unquote, of letter delivery and mailboxes. The order cites that the USPS incurred $65 billion in losses, was unable to meet retiree health benefits, and remained on the high-risk list of the Government Accountability Office. The task force will be headed by Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, Office of Management and Budget Director Mick Mulvaney, and Director of the Office of Personnel Management Jeff Pond. So there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of weeks about, Trump versus Amazon. Trump's going after Amazon. Amazon has seen its stock decline because of all this talk. I've seen reports saying that the U.S. Postal Service loses like $1.50 per package that Amazon sends. I'm not sure if that's entirely accurate or not. I hate to say it, but I really don't know where I stand on this issue. Obviously, we know that the post office is, it's a money pit for the United States federal government.
And it's long overdue that we looked into the running of it because, they're not efficient whatsoever.
No, it's
and
not.
This is taxpayer dollars.
I was going to say, it's not efficient. They lose money every year. They lose a lot of money every year. If it weren't for junk mail being sent out, I doubt they'd be delivering very many things besides just bills.
It's had a declined relevance with, stuff like Amazon and FedEx that do much better jobs.
I was going to say, but at the same time, you have to remember one thing. If it weren't for the Postal Service delivering Amazon packages, how many packages would they be delivering? A lot less than they're delivering right now. And so I understand both sides of this issue here that, yeah, they are losing a lot of money. Is Amazon, abusing the Postal Service in order to get cheaper packages? Probably, but at the same time, that's might be the only thing that's keeping them afloat. Granted, they are sinking very fast. I really don't know where I stand, but I'm definitely happy that they are looking into the post office's finances, because that is something that, as you said, is definitely long overdue. And it's something that, if the federal government is going to be so big, you might as well not have things that are going to be losing money in the process.
Most definitely. With that said, let's move on to some stuff in the topic of immigration. So the first thing that I want to talk about this week for immigration is a Arizona Supreme Court ruling on DACA recipients. DACA recipients will no longer get in-state tuition rates in Arizona.
Good.
On Monday, the Arizona Supreme Court ruled that the state's colleges must not offer in-state tuition to immigrants covered under the DACA program. The court unanimously upheld the Arizona Court of Appeals ruling, stating that federal and state laws ban the Maricopa community colleges from giving such aid to DACA recipients. Over 2,000 DACA recipients are currently attending community college or a state university where they pay in-state rates, and that's 2,000 for Arizona. Still, DACA recipients might not pay the full non-residence rate because in 2015, the Arizona Board of Regents approved a lower tuition rate for non-residents who are Arizona high school graduates. The rate is 50% higher than an in-state tuition when you have graduated from an Arizona high school.
So, they're not having to pay the full out-of-state price, but at the same time, they're not getting it cheaper for the in-state price.
No.
Now, granted...
Which this is how it should be everywhere.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously, I don't want any of the DACA recipients to even be in this country to begin with. But if you're going to be sending them to college, or at least allow them to go to college, they should not be paying in-state rates. I can also understand how you say, yeah, but if they're, living in the state, they graduate from high school in the state, should they be paying out-of-state rates? I can actually understand how, that argument would be they shouldn't be paying out-of-state rates either. So that whole 50% higher than the in-state tuition, I'm okay with that for now until these people get deported.
Yeah. Moving on from this story, though, let's get into something that Sessions has done this week.
Yes. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is freezing an aid program that used to benefit illegals. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is shutting down a taxpayer-funded service called the Legal Orientation Program, also known as the LOP, which provides immigration court advice to immigrants. It helped roughly 53,000 immigrants during 2017, which is up from only 29,000 in 2012. Significant increase there, almost double. Green card rates, however, and this is where this gets important, green card rates for LOP participants were 5 times higher than migrants who did not use the program. So essentially what happens is, immigrants, whether they be illegal or legal, are able to use this legal program in order to try to get
this taxpayer-funded
program to help themselves out, get green cards or whatever, thing they're trying to get. And so by shutting this down, that does help us. It means that less of those things are going to be given out. It's going to make it harder for people that shouldn't be here to begin with, at least from the illegal side. And if you're a legal immigrant, then, there are already other ways for you to go about these things. Granted, should we make it easier or harder? I'll let that be up to every other person's decision. But at the same time, I'm very happy that this program is being shut down. They said it's probably only a temporary shutdown, but I'm happy with it, for now at least.
So yeah, very good stuff. We don't want these people getting green cards.
And I don't want our taxpayer dollars to be helping potential illegal immigrants getting, any type of legal assistance in the United States.
Yeah, most definitely. Moving on from there, we've been talking on this program for the last couple weeks now about battles between Southern California cities and the state at large in regards to their sanctuary city or state policy.
Yes.
And there are some more California cities that are now joining the lawsuit against sanctuary state status.
Yeah, so the newest city that has joined is the city of Newport Beach. Their city council voted unanimously, 7-0, to join the lawsuit against the California state sanctuary laws. This brings the total number of cities suing the state to 13, including Orange County. Newport Beach Councilman Scott Piotr said, quote, "We want to be a law and order city and a law and order state. We want to comply with federal law and state law. They put us into a situation where we have to choose, and we don't like it." Now, Do you want me to list off the cities, those 13 that have joined the lawsuit? Most of them we've covered on the program before. There are a couple that we have not. One of them is Barstow, California, which is not in Orange County. If you don't know where Barstow is, if you've ever driven between Las Vegas and Los Angeles, you go right through it. It's the interstate that connects between
Yeah,
the
you can
two.
say the different cities there in the lawsuit.
Yeah, so the cities, now, like I said, some of these we covered on the show before, so it's just repeating them. The cities are Westminster, Fountain Valley, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, Aliso Viejo, Escondido, San Juan Capistrano, Mission Viejo, Orange, Yorba Linda, Los Alamitos, Hesperia, and Barstow. I've been to a lot of those cities in my trips
I've never
to
been to California, so
yeah, my
frame of reference.
I was gonna say, my grandmother, before she died, she lived in Orange County, so I'm very well aware of almost all the cities that I listed off there. So it's great to see that the resistance, if you want to use that word, in
the real resistance.
Yeah, the real resistance in California is, it's gaining steam. Every week there's more cities that are joining. Look at this one, 7-0. The city council voted to join the lawsuit. Not a single dissenting vote.
I know that we have a number of listeners also from Huntington Beach. I don't know about the other cities. I haven't checked the statistics on, who's downloading from where in quite a while, but I know Huntington Beach is represented on that list. So if you're listening, we support what you're doing out there. Need to take the fight to California.
And I've said this a couple of times in the show already, but I'm just going to reiterate. Granted, California is a very blue state, and the Los Angeles area is a very blue area, but there is a pocket of red, and that's right around the Orange County area. So if you're wondering why all these areas, or all these cities that are joining this lawsuit, are all in like Southern California, an area that you think be blue, that's it's not a extremely red area. I'd say it's lean red, and it's probably going to lean blue here, if not already. But Republicans still do hold power. As I've said in the program before, there are a couple of Republicans that are in the United States Congress elected out of districts in that area. So, keep up the good work and continue what you're doing.
Yeah. So, for the last story on immigration, last week we talked about, the call for National Guardsmen to the border. And we've seen, a good number already head to the border, which is great stuff. And the last story that we have this week touches on some of the stuff that they'll be doing at the border. Mm-hmm. So the National Guard is going to be providing aerial surveillance of the border.
Good.
A primary role of the National Guard posted to the Mexico border will be to provide added aerial surveillance. The Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection told Congress on Thursday, speaking at a hearing of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland Security. Kevin McAleenan said that the Guard can provide assets that are in short supply in his law enforcement agency. Quote, "What the National Guard is going to do is bring significant aviation assets that can close our gap for that surveillance piece at the immediate border. It is supportive, but it also tells us what's crossing so we can interdict." So, we talked last week on, the National Guardsmen, what their role will be out there. They likely won't be out there patrolling the border per se.
Yeah.
We talked about how they'll likely be in a supporting role, maybe constructing detainment centers,
working in offices, that sort of stuff.
This will be another aspect of their service at the border, and a very important one. Aerial surveillance helps us know who's coming before they even get to the border, and be able to identify when someone has crossed the border. And with thousands of National Guardsmen going to the border, there's going to be a good number of people dedicated just for this practice by itself. Something that, the Border Patrol isn't able to do at the moment.
Yeah, and I was going to say, one thing that we were going to talk about in the show, but I cut, was California said that they're going to also be sending troops to the border. So I think that means that every border state, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and California, has said that they're going to be sending troops to the border. I know Trump requested about 4,000 National Guard troops. If you add up the total that just those 4 states are sending, it's about half of that. I know some other states said that they might be sending some as well. But California, they made... When Jerry Brown released a letter saying that he was going to send 400 troops to the border, he wanted to make it perfectly, absolutely clear that the reason that they were there has nothing to do with immigration, and they weren't going to be doing any type of immigration enforcement. But, as we've talked about on the show, as other news programs have talked about, yeah, it's a supporting role that these National Guard troops are going to be playing at the border. They're not going to be patrolling. They're not going to be helping people do ICE raids. They're not going to be, arresting people that they see illegally. They're there for supporting role to give the Border Patrol and ICE and any other groups in the area more freedom and liberty to do their jobs. If you can have a couple of National Guard troops in the office running things that otherwise would be ran by Border Patrol that could be out in the field actually working, absolutely good. Do it that way. And that is the entire point of having National Guard troops down there, is so that you can have them in this supporting role to allow the Border Patrol and other groups to actually do what they need to be doing. So absolutely, it's great that they're going to be providing aerial assistance. I don't know if that means planes. It's probably going to mean drones, which, I'm fine with that as well. So next time you're driving and you're near the border and you look up and you see the drone, salute your National Guard servicemen. That's all I got to say.
Moving on now to some 2018 election news. We're going to start off with something huge.
Very big.
Very big stuff. Good stuff as well.
Yes.
And that is Paul Ryan is not seeking re-election.
Hallelujah! Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, announced Wednesday that he will not be seeking re-election this year. He cited reasons such as wanting to spend more time with his family and concern over the GOP's ability to win in November by not wanting to serve in the minority party. If the GOP maintains control of the House after the midterms, the three people that are most likely to fill the Speaker of the House position, and this has been talked about in different TV news networks, so that's where I'm getting this information from. The three people most likely to fill that position are either House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy from California, House Majority Whip Steve Scalise from Louisiana, or Representative Jim Jordan from Ohio. Jim Jordan from Ohio, you and I have both seen him talk. We've seen
Orlando.
him speak, so that would be cool if he got it. Paul Ryan has endorsed Kevin McCarthy for that position. Of those three people, Kevin McCarthy is my least favorite pick for it. But
I would say I wouldn't want Steve Scalise's speaker the most, personally.
You would want him?
I wouldn't. But yeah, Jim Jordan would probably be the best pick.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, for what we want.
I would, from best to worst, I would rank Jim Jordan, then Steve Scalise, then Kevin McCarthy. I will say, however, that any of those three people is a lot more pro-Trump than Paul Ryan is.
Yeah.
Would be on board with Trump's agenda more, and probably, definitely, would be more effective in Congress. I want to say that, I hate to say it,
it wouldn't be hard to be more effective than what Paul Ryan has done.
I have a feeling that it's probably going to be Kevin McCarthy, just because the way things are. But,
and his position is very prominent.
Yeah, but, Steve Scalise also has the whole I got shot type of thing, and he's been very effective as House Majority Whip. So, if it's any of those three guys, is an upgrade from Paul Ryan. So can we really complain at that point if you're making progress? I can't really, will I be disappointed if it's Kevin McCarthy? A little bit, not going to lie. But hopefully it's Steve Scalise or Jim Jordan. I know you don't really want to be Steve Scalise of those three people. So, yeah. That's all I have to say about that.
Now, here's the thing I just want to ask you. Paul Ryan is leaving here in 2018. Will we still hear about him in 2020, though? Will we still see him try and, get in the primary position?
I am going to say no. I think he will probably, what's the word when people, field it is not the right word, when they kind of, test the waters to see how things are going to whether or not they should run. I have a feeling he will probably do that, but in terms of being a serious political candidate for president, I don't think so, because of the fact that, a lot of people have talked that Paul Ryan is unhappy with being away from his family a lot. His kids, I think, are starting to, they're getting older. He wants to spend more time with them. He wants to be at home more. He doesn't like the negative pressure that's being put on him. And so from that regard, I don't think that he really, really wants to be president. I think he knows that he's an ineffective person. He's an ineffective leader in the Republican Party. And so, yeah, he'd probably get a lot of support from the neocons and the never-Trumpers and that wing of the Republican Party. But is it enough to stop Trump or to primary Trump in 2020? I don't think so. But that doesn't mean he's not going to try. Or at least, like I said, test the waters. So
I mean, just talking from my own, life, my dad didn't vote for Donald Trump. He wrote in Paul Ryan. So he already is a vote there.
Well, there you go, Paul Ryan. You've got some support out there, buddy. Go ahead and try.
Just talking in particular on his district, the first district of Wisconsin, his CPVI is R+5, so it's likely to stay in the Republican Party.
Yeah, it's likely to stay. Now, granted, Paul Ryan, he raised so much money, so anyone trying to primary him did not stand a chance. Now it's an open primary, and I want to label it this way, so I don't actually say anything that's incorrect here. Democrats, did any Democrat really stand a chance of beating Paul Ryan?
No.
In that district? Absolutely not.
What you need to keep in mind is to get to the position of House Speaker in the GOP, I'm not sure how they do this for the Democrats, but for the GOP, you have to pay the RNCC yearly to have that position, and to be the House Speaker costs $20 million a year.
Yeah.
So, Paul Ryan can afford to pay that every single year on top of campaigning. He had, he was flush with cash.
Yeah. So without having, your person that you don't even stand a chance.
And he has tons of name recognition.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I still think that a Republican, whoever ends up in that primary, whoever ends up winning that primary, probably will win. I think because of the fact that Paul Ryan is in that district, the people that normally would be the Democratic challenger, I don't want to say they're not taking that district seriously, but before this announcement, they knew that they probably didn't stand a chance. Obviously, you're going to have to probably run someone in that district. Does it give the advantage to the Democrats? No. Does it help them? Yes. So the fact that it's an R+5 district means that, in a normal election, a Republican is going to win it. Is there going to be probably, increased turnout of Democrats for these midterms? Absolutely. I think everybody knows that. I think everybody understands and realizes that the Democrats are a lot more enthusiastic about the midterms than the Republicans are. But is that enough to swing an R+5 district to a blue district? I don't think so at this point. I think if it was an R+3 or less, that would be a stronger possibility. But it's just barely enough to where I think we hold that seat pretty easily.
Yeah. Moving on to the other story we had for 2018 election news, there has been a ballot initiative to break up the state of California into 3 separate states.
Yeah.
And this ballot initiative has received enough signatures to appear on the 2018 ballot.
Right. The signature campaign is called Cal3, C-A-L-3. It's led by billionaire venture capitalist Tim Draper. He has collected the 600,000 signatures. He only needed to collect about 585,000, so he's collected enough. And because he collected enough signatures, he has the ability to actually get that on the 2018 ballot. They said he's probably going to officially file the petition with the Secretary of State of California early, this upcoming week here, meaning very, very, very strong chance it actually will appear on the ballot. Now, the campaign calls for breaking up California into 3 separate states: California, Northern California, and Southern California, although the citizens of those areas would be able to change the name of those states. If you see a map of what this is doing, essentially from about Los Angeles up the coastline to San Francisco is California. And Southern California is everything from like San Diego to the Arizona border up to about New Mexico, or I'm sorry, not New Mexico, about to the Nevada border, and then kind of following that up till about in line with where San Francisco is, and then everything above San Francisco is just all Northern California. Now, we've talked on this show about the potential for there being like the state of Jefferson, which is a movement in Northern California to get that to be its own state. So what would happen if all the Northern California people vote to get rid of, or to break up into another state?
That region went to Donald Trump.
Yeah, exactly. Strongly for Donald Trump. If you look at the counties that they want to include for Northern California, Trump wins that by with about 55 to 60% of the vote. And so that would mean you've got. I was doing the math before. That area up north in Northern California is roughly the amount of people that would give them about 5 representatives in Congress, okay? Plus 2 senators for a state. That's 7 electoral votes that are red electoral votes that you otherwise were not going to be getting.
Yeah.
And so for that regard, I support that. The question I have is, let's say all the people in the north vote to split up the state, but everybody else doesn't. maybe you should go ahead and just split it up for the people that did. I'm very interested to see a county-by-county breakdown of how this actually wins.
The thing that concerns me is, every state gets to have 2 senators.
Right, and that's the problem, too.
Would this help the Democrats get a senatorial advantage over us? It potentially could.
It potentially could, and the strongest reason for that is, the California, or the strip along LA to San Francisco, that's still going to be blue. It's still going to stay as 2 Democrat senators, much like California has right now. So in that regard, you're not changing things. The question comes when you start having 2 more states, 4 more senators. How is that going to break down? Is it going to be, 2 red, 2 blue? Are they all going to be blue? Is there going to be, a lot of, they talk about how in the electoral college system it disenfranchises red voters in blue states and blue voters in red states actually show up to vote. Does that make, Northern California and Southern California, the parts that aren't on the coast, does that suddenly make those more competitive? It might. And, if you have something that could be 50-50, by saying, hey, now all of a sudden you have a voice in the system that otherwise might not have counted, who knows how that might turn out. It might stay blue. It might also stay red. And so in general, I do absolutely support this movement. I hope that it does get voted into law. I have a strong feeling it's not going to get voted into law, or, it's not going to pass during the midterms. But hey, crazy things happen. And I'm interested to see exactly what percentage of the vote this thing actually gets in terms of support. That's pretty much what I was going to say. The last thing that I would say is, the campaign has said that the reason for the breakup is because it would better represent the citizens of those states, which is pretty much what I kind of just said right now. Specifically, the huge divide between the extremely blue coast and the more red inner portions and northern area of the state. So it would definitely help the citizens of those areas in order to be better represented in Congress. It might create multiple more swing states for all we know. And so it's one of those things where I like it. I'm cautious about it. I'm optimistic if it passes, but I know it's probably not going to pass.
Definitely unprecedented what we're seeing, though. Uncharted territory as far as splitting up the state.
And, we just talked about secession movements on our last midweek that we did just a few days ago. And so, this is very recent in our mind. We talked about the state of Jefferson on that. We even talked about California secession on that episode. So if you want to hear us go into a lot more detail about this, go ahead and listen back to our most recent midweek episode that we just did last Wednesday.
Which has been doing pretty well with the downloads, so I'm happy to see. And we're going to continue to try and keep up with the midweeks because, we've been not doing them for months.
Yeah, I don't think we should be skipping a week for a while.
Yeah.
But, moving on to some other non-election related news, there was a vote in the House of Representatives on whether or not to pass a balanced budget amendment this week, and it failed. It failed with a vote of 233 to 184. Now, constitutional amendments require 2/3 of the House of Representatives' support in order to move forward and then go to the Senate, which means, if you do the math, it came about 50 votes short of passing. Now, the House has previously voted on balanced budget amendments both in 2011 and the last time before that was 1995. Okay, so, it's very rare that these things come up, but every time it's come up, it's always failed. And so, it's unfortunate, but, the thing is, if you look at the people that voted against it, some of the Republicans that voted against it were some of the more libertarian people that you like to talk about, your Justin Mash, your Thomas Massey types. Those people, some of them voted against this, which makes you really question what was it. And I'll tell you why right here. The way that this quote-unquote balanced budget amendment was written in a really bad way. So I can understand how guys who normally would be supporting something like that did not. But
generally, we'd want to see a balanced budget amendment. You look at the level of debt. We're starting to get places where we're at dangerous levels of debt. We can't sustain too much more. The federal balance is not, balanced whatsoever. We have a large deficit, and it's something that we need to fix, pretty soon here. Otherwise, we're going to get to a point where, there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, and I think I could say that my 2 strongest things that I don't like about the Trump administration are, number one, foreign policy regarding the Middle East, like we talked about at the beginning of the show. The second one is debt and spending levels. It looks like we're going to continue to have high deficits. We're going to continue to have more growing debt. We're already at like 20 $21 trillion
yeah.
our national debt, and that looks like that's just going to continue to rise. Those are my two biggest problems with the Trump administration right now. So would it be nice to see a balanced budget amendment? Absolutely, I think. But at this point, it does not have the support that you're going to have in Congress with the way things are right now.
Yeah. So the last thing that we want to touch on with the bottom of the stack national news before we move on to current year college craziness is some developments in Tennessee. Tennessee is defunding Planned Parenthood. Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam signed a bill defunding Planned Parenthood this week and will, quote, will now request a federal waiver which allows them to bar TennCare, Tennessee's Medicaid program, from giving money to any abortion facility. When the bill passed the state legislature back in March, State Representative Jimmy Matlock pointed out that the state has effectively given the abortion giant nearly $1 million in just 6 years. Funds that once were directed towards abortions will now be given to other healthcare providers, which obliterates the oft-repeated protest from Planned Parenthood supporters that women will die unless they are given federal funds.
So it essentially just takes the money from here and moves it somewhere else. Is that right?
Yeah.
In a way.
No funding will go to anything that gives abortions.
Well, I'm good. I'm happy with that. So, good job, Tennessee.
Yeah, this is good. And, we have the difference of opinion to where you're pro-life and I'm pro-choice, but I still don't support funding for Planned Parenthood.
Taxpayer funding especially.
Because, I don't want people that don't agree with abortion to have to fund this stuff. And two, Planned Parenthood is, a political operative. They put their money behind campaigns that, fund leftist causes, and, I don't want any of that. So good stuff what they're doing out there in Tennessee, and hopefully we can see more of that. With that said, let's move on to some current year college craziness. Current year college craziness, the segment of the show where we go over the crazy stuff that happens on college campuses here and abroad, but, predominantly here because we just got the craziest. We got the craziest of colleges. And, coming up this week in, in our neck of the woods, Texas State, they're having the Tunnel of Oppression. So
yeah.
We are going to the Tunnel of Oppression that they're holding on Tuesday. We'll report back next week's Current Year College Craziest on the fun experiences from that. But let's get into the stuff that's happened this week on college campuses. We're going to start off at the University of Southern California.
Yes, a mural has been installed at the University of Southern California that says, quote, dismantle whiteness and misogyny on this campus. It was put up by the intersectional feminist artist collective called When Women Disrupt, or WWD, in conjunction with students in the class which is titled Women, Designing Media for Social Change. It is located at the entrance of the Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism building and features 4 females of color on the sides of it. Communications professor Allison Trope said that, quote, the installation is intended to spark a dialogue, but she is disappointed that the school administration would not allow the mural to be outward-facing. It's currently inward-facing, so the only people that can see it are people leaving the building, and also in a more prominent location on campus. So, if you don't know the campus, that building's kind of out of the way in like a corner. So really the only people that are going to be seeing this thing are people who are going to that building and then leaving that building, I should say. And according to the Facebook page for the school, and that school being the Annenberg School for Communications and Journalism, not the actual USC, the piece was sponsored by the Institute for Diversity and Empowerment, also known as IDEA. So Enzo, are you happy that there's a mural saying that we need to dismantle whiteness and misogyny on this campus?
So, one, how much misogyny is really going on at USC, Like open misogyny, there's probably next to none. But the whole dismantle whiteness thing, we've talked about the idea of white people being like a social construct, an idea, and that's where they get this whole whiteness stuff. It really just means they don't want white people there.
Exactly.
They want to dismantle whiteness as in white people don't go to the college. That at least to me seems like the end goal of the Institute for Diversity and Empowerment, and that goes alongside, featuring women of color on your building. They just want it to the point where, white people aren't there whatsoever.
They also have a plaque that they installed, or I should, I'm going to say that again. They also installed a little, thing by it. You know how, if you go to an art museum, they got the little thing next to it that describes who put it up, for what reason, what it means, that sort of stuff?
Description?
Yeah, but a little, frame type thing.
Yeah.
They put one of those up there, too. So anyone that's walking by it that has questions about it, they can just read that, and it tells them everything they need to know about why they want to dismantle whiteness and misogyny on that campus.
It's kind of disgusting, really. But moving on, we have a professor who was fired this week.
Yeah.
For being racist against
Well,
whites.
she was actually fired a while back, but she's now suing the school that fired her, and I'm going to tell you why. So Professor Lisa Durden of Essex County College in Newark, New Jersey, is suing the school after she was fired. It all started when she appeared on Tucker Carlson's show back in June of 2017 to defend a No Whites Allowed sign that was at a Black Lives Matter Memorial Day party. On the show, she said, and you'll probably remember these quotes because it kind of went viral. She said, quote, "Boo-hoo-hoo, you white people are angry because you couldn't use your white privilege card to get invited to Black Lives Matter's all-black Memorial Day celebration." To which Tucker Carlson replied, "It's such a basic violation of what I thought we all agreed on, which is you don't attack people for things they can't control, namely their race." Well, after she went on the show, Essex County College President Anthony Monroe asked Durden to not return to her adjunct professor role after controversy started to arise, started to go viral on Twitter. A couple of people wrote in and complained to the school, and he said, "You know what, I don't want you to return to this position." Well, she's now suing the school because of that. In fact, Durden's lawsuit claims that her First Amendment rights were violated and that she claims that her First Amendment rights are being violated, and she is now being represented by the Foundation for Individual Human Rights and Education attorney, Ari Cohn. So, she's suing the school because she thinks that her First Amendment rights are violated after saying something racist. And isn't it amazing, Enzo, that a, leftist, I could say, a non-white person, I could say, can claim that their First Amendment rights are being violated if they say something racist. Yet if you're someone on the right who would try to defend a no blacks allowed at a White Lives Matter Memorial Day party, if you tried to go on TV and defend that, you'd be fired too.
Yeah.
And everyone would support your firing.
And the whole thing with the First Amendment is, you have the ability to speak and the government can't suppress you. Doesn't leave you, free from repercussions for what you say. If someone that I hired was making such statements on the television, I wouldn't, continue to employ them. Why? For what reason? So yeah, kind of crazy stuff. Hopefully she doesn't succeed in what she's doing with her lawsuit. Moving on now, back to California. It's always California.
Yeah.
It always is. No whites allowed at college swimming party. Scripps College in Claremont, California. Which, where's Claremont?
I'll look it up.
Okay, because I have no idea about California. I've never been there. Scripps College in Claremont, California has approved a swimming party that only people who identify as persons of color are allowed to attend. The party is being held by a group called Café con Leche, which, if you don't speak Spanish, that means coffee with milk, who describe themselves as the, quote, badass Latinx at Scripps. The party was held at the Scripps Sally Tierman House Pool from 7 to 10 p.m. after pool hours on Friday. So this is an event that already happened. But, I don't know, it's crazy. It's just openly, segregationist. And I thought that's not allowed. We have civil rights laws that prevent, discrimination on the basis of race, but they held a party that does exactly that.
If you were wondering, Claremont, California is about 30 miles east of Los Angeles. It's right next to Ontario. So if anyone knows that area there, it's right around there.
Yeah. So they had a Facebook event that announced the whole party. And there was one little thing that I wanted to quote from their little announcement. Bring your chanclas and your homies. I don't know what chanclas is.
I'll
guess
look it
it's
up.
a Spanish word. Bring your chanclas and your homies over.
Flip-flops.
Okay. Over to our nice-ass resort pool. Let's take up space. The announcement said, adding that the event is, quote, a safe space for students who identify as POC to come together and build community.
Okay, so if it's for students who identify as people of color.
Yeah.
That reminds me of that lady, I forget her name. Remember that white lady that said that she was a black lady?
Rachel Dolezal?
That's the exact one I was thinking of. She identifies as a person of color.
Yeah.
Would she be allowed in?
I would imagine so.
So if I walked up and started to identify, would I be allowed in? I want to say
it really depends, you know. Like, there are a lot of Hispanic people that are of, you know, a European origin, but they identify as Hispanic. And, you know, it's safe to assume there's plenty of those people in, you know, Cafe Con Leche that, you know, otherwise would look white. But because they identify as a person of color, they're allowed in. Now, where the group makes the line on that, I don't know. I'd imagine it just came down to being visibly white.
Yeah.
I haven't heard any follow-up on the story, how the party went. It was after, you know, pool hours being open, so I guess no one was inconvenienced by them being out there. But, yeah, it's kind of bad that they have, you know, open segregationist parties supported by the university. Moving on to the last story that we have for Current Year College Craziness this week. At the University of Virginia, their Thomas Jefferson statue was vandalized. Early Friday morning on the University of Virginia campus, graffiti was found on the statue of Thomas Jefferson. The words "racist" plus "rapist" were spray painted on the statue. The incident coincided with Jefferson's 275th birthday. Jefferson himself was the founder of the university in 1819. Officials do not know who made the graffiti at this point. So, you know, we have talked in the past about the controversy of bringing down Confederate statues and protecting Confederate monuments, but we've always said that the fight doesn't end there. Once they take down the Confederate statues and Confederate monuments, they'll move on to the Founding Fathers, you know, because they were all white guys. And this is just kind of an incident of that happening. You know, I guess by today's standards, Jefferson would be a racist, but he wasn't outside the ordinary for the times he lived in.
No.
Which, you know, it's just so wrong for us to try and judge the past by today's standards. There's completely different morality. Now, the whole rapist thing, there's no evidence to substantiate that. They like to say that, you know, Thomas Jefferson raped one of his slaves.
He raped his slaves.
He raped his slaves, and, you know, they had descendants from that, but there's never been evidence to support that. It's just kind of a thing they like to believe in.
Not only that, but show some respect to the person who founded your university. I mean, Monticello, you know, the land in the building that Thomas Jefferson owned is in the city of Charlottesville right there. You can go there and visit. I believe he's even buried there as well. So, you know, it's called this thing called, you know, lasting impact, lasting memory. Found something that's going to continue for generation after generation after generation. At what point, you know, does it cease when the generations no longer respect the person that founded the very university that you were going to, if these people actually went to the university?
Which, you know, is debatable, but maybe the person, you know, that did it goes to that school, and, I mean, they're not complaining about their opportunity to go to the school.
No, of course not.
But, yeah, this is, you know, just, you know, we talk about slippery slopes being a fallacy. It is kind of true, though.
Yeah.
It is the slippery slope, you know. The Confederate statues go first, and then it's going to be our Founding Fathers. And what follows that, I don't know.
Are they going to blow up Mount Rushmore like that one article said? Who knows?
Oh, man, I forgot about that article.
Yeah.
But,
you know who's also on that? You know who's also on Mount Rushmore?
Who?
Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson. So, yeah, kind of a crazy story out there. But, it's not the first time, actually, there's been, you know, protest at that statue. Last September, there was a large Black Lives Matter event held outside of that statue where they took a black tarp, they threw it over Jefferson, and they held a sign that said, TJ is a racist and rapist. So it's not the first time that people have, spoken these resentments against Thomas Jefferson, I guess.
Yeah.
But, yeah, crazy stuff nonetheless. Moving on from there, let's get into some international news. We got a decent amount of international news.
It's all pretty good.
Not a deluge of it, but pretty good stuff this week. And we're going to start off international news with Asia.
Yes. Big news out of North Korea. They have told the U.S. that they're open to denuclearization. This is big news. So, North Korea has told the United States officials it is prepared to discuss the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, according to Reuters. The 2018 North Korea-United States Summit is the proposed future meeting between the leaders of North Korea and the United States, which is planned to take place around the end of May of this year, which would be the first time that a sitting U.S. president will have met the leader of North Korea since the Korean War back in the 1950s. Kim Jong-un, in a handwritten letter, invited President Trump to meet. North Korea has also offered to suspend their nuclear missile testing alongside their invitation for talks. Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said that in the meantime, all sanctions and maximum pressure will remain. So, dude, this is amazing, outstanding news.
Yeah. It would be monumental stuff for Trump to meet, with Kim Jong-un. For the last couple of years now with the presidency of Donald Trump, especially in the television, they play up the whole, Trump is so insane with his tweeting, he's going to get us into World War III with Kim Jong-un. How great would it be for the opposite to happen?
And it looks like that's exactly what's going to happen is the opposite. It looks
Trump has expressed his desire to meet with Kim Jong-un himself, and it looks like they'll get this meeting done pretty soon.
And to go back to one of the things that I said earlier in the program about, the things I do and don't support about what Trump is doing, I don't like his foreign policy in the Middle East, but his foreign policy that he's done regarding Asia, specifically, negotiating new trade deals with China, the whole denuclearization thing and trying to, de-escalate things with North Korea, it's going fantastically well. If you want to consider NAFTA even a foreign policy thing, which, you could say it is, you could also say it's an economic issue, that's being successful as well. Many different countries are opening up to different trade deals. China even is coming to the U.S. and, wanting to get new trade deals, especially since the U.S. said that they're going to be implementing those tariffs that we talked about, over the last month or so. And so, in regards to this foreign policy in the Middle East, I don't like it. But what Trump's been doing, especially with Asian countries, is amazing. And, it's yet to be seen about what Trump's lasting impact as a president is going to be. But just imagine if even one thing could be remembered for Trump is that you were able to, get rid of the North Korean nuclear program and make sure that, North Korea is no longer a threat to the region or the rest of the world. That is an amazing effort that is being taken. And so far, he's been relatively successful. Granted, we're going to have to see what the outcome is of this meeting that they're going to have in May. But I'm looking forward to it. And if we can actually make some good, movement, that should help us in the midterms as well.
Yeah. Moving on from this story, though, we also have some stuff to talk about in regards to China and tariffs.
Yeah, and that kind of goes with what I was also saying, regarding different tariffs. China has agreed to cut auto import tariffs. Chinese President Xi Jinping appeared to strike a conciliatory tone during a speech on Tuesday where he promised to cut China's auto import tariffs and ease restrictions on foreign ownership in its auto industry as tensions play out with Washington over tariffs. Xi made no direct mention of the dispute with President Trump, but has pledged to open China's markets further and improve conditions for foreign companies. He warned against having a Cold War mentality, which he called outdated, according to Bloomberg. Xi also said that Beijing will significantly lower tariffs on auto imports this year and ease restrictions on foreign ownership in the auto industry as soon as possible. China charges a total duties of 25% on imported cars, which is a 10% customs tariff plus a 15% auto tax. Since December 2016, Beijing has also charged an additional 10% on super luxury vehicles that are priced above $200,000. So again, this is great news. Everyone said, oh my God, these tariffs are going to destroy the world economy, but
it's
no.
going to bring a trade war.
It's the exact opposite. China's, cutting tariffs that normally would be placed on things that are imported from the United States. And that's good news.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with it.
Moving on from Asia, we have one story to touch on out of Africa, and that is some plane crashes in Algeria.
Yeah, this is probably the saddest story that we've talked about on the show in a long while. And there was a plane crash in Algeria that killed a lot of people. An Algerian military transport plane crashed in a field just outside of the Boufarik military base, which is about 20 miles southwest of the capital of Algiers. The plane was carrying 247 passengers plus 10 crew members, but none of the 257 people on board survived the crash. Most of the victims were soldiers and their families. Witnesses said that they saw flames coming from one of the plane's engines before it took off, and one farmer said that he saw passengers jumping out of the aircraft before the crash occurred. The accident is the worst plane crash in Algeria's history. So our thoughts and our prayers go out to the families of everyone involved there. It's never good to have plane crashes, let alone plane crashes that kill 257 people. Innocent lives that did not need to be taken. So, we're
Bad
with
stuff.
them. Just thought we'd mention that, though.
Yeah. Pretty big stuff.
Yeah.
Moving on from there, we got some stuff out of Europe that I wanted to touch on. The first one being that Russia was not behind the Salisbury poisoning. We've touched on this here and there over the last couple of weeks. Big controversy. The substance used on Sergei Skripal was an agent called BZ, according to Swiss State Spies Lab. The toxin was never produced in Russia, but was in service in the US, UK, and other NATO states. Sergei Skripal, a former Russian double agent, and his daughter Yulia were poisoned with an incapacitating toxin known as 3-quinticidal benzylate, or BZ. The Swiss chemical lab worked with the samples that London handed over to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, or OPCW.
Which we talked about earlier.
Yes. The Swiss center sent the results to OPCW. However, the UN chemical watchdog limited itself only in confirming the formula of the substance used to poison the Skripals in its final report, without mentioning anything about the other facts presented in the Swiss document.
Well, I mean,
it kind of confirms what we believed the whole time, that, the Russians weren't behind the poisoning, in this instance, which, this was used to justify more sanctions on Russia.
Yeah.
And once again, they can't provide evidence for Russia doing so.
Amazing how that seems to be a coincidence that keeps coming up, that there isn't evidence.
It's
that
crazy.
Russia's doing these
everything
things.
just gets blamed on Russia. There was one thing that I didn't mention that happened with the whole Pentagon talking about what happened with the Syria strikes. They said following the Syria strikes, there was a 2,000% increase in Russian bots, spreading Russian disinformation. Which pretty much means if you disagree with what they're saying, you're a Russian bot.
Yeah, they just wanted to somehow justify the fact that a vast majority of people did not want those airstrikes to occur.
Yeah.
And yet all they can say is, well, no, it's just these Russian bots. Don't worry about them. They're not important.
And once again, based on things without any evidence, there's talks of more sanctions on Russia to come on Monday. Washington plans to slap Moscow with a new batch of sanctions as early as Monday, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, said. Quote, "The new measures are said to be in response to Russia's alleged aggressive actions," which, one would be the Salisbury poison incident, but two, they also, claim Russia to be the de facto force behind the chemical attack in Syria, which we don't have any evidence for. Continue on. Haley blamed Moscow for the tense relations between the U.S. and Russia and accused it of continuously engaging in aggressive behavior. She added that Washington would respond with a number of aggressive steps of its own. Quote, "The sanctions are continuing to happen, which you will see again on Monday," Haley told Fox News Sunday. "This lets them know that this is not good behavior." The new restrictive measures would be announced by Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin on Monday, Haley told the CBS. She also added that the sanctions, quote, will have to do with chemical equipment used by the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Speaking to Fox News, Haley accused Russia of de facto facilitating the alleged chemical attack in the city of Douma in the Damascus suburbs by supporting the Syrian government. Quote, Assad knew that Russia had its back. Assad knew that Russia would cover for them at the United Nations, and Assad got reckless, she said, adding that the U.S. has to be conscious of the fact that we can't allow even the smallest use of chemical weapons. Despite numerous accusations she threw at Moscow, Haley told Fox News that the U.S. hopes it can get a better relationship with Russia. It is our best national interest to do so, she added.
Well, probably not going to be your best national interest to go bombing a country that, apparently Russia has the back of.
They're allies
I don't
with
think
Syria.
that is a very good idea, personally.
I don't think sanctions also doesn't help, us reaching better relations with Russia either.
No, it hurts.
It's so crazy to hear these statements from Nikki Haley where she says, accusatory things with no evidence and says, we will punish you for those things with no evidence, but, we still want, better relations because it's in our best interest.
I just don't see it, dude.
It's so strange how this stuff all works, but it happens. Closing out international news this week and the program this week, though, we are going to close with a humorous story because it's usually the best way to end it. Mm-hmm. And that is Argentinian cops were fired this week for claiming mice stole marijuana evidence. 8 police officers in Pilar, Argentina were fired after they claimed that mice ate a half-ton of marijuana of the 13,000 pounds that were in their police storage warehouse. Experts dispelled the idea, saying that the mice would not mistake marijuana for food, and if they even had, they would have likely died from it, and corpse would have been found among the marijuana. All 8 were dismissed from their jobs, and they'll face the judge on May 4th for their final decision.
Well, may the 4th be with them.
But, there was just a half ton, 1,000 pounds of marijuana that seemed to be missing, and the best they could come up with is mice ate it all. 1,000 pounds worth. Something makes me believe that maybe something else happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. This sounds a little more reasonable, but maybe those guys were just taking it.
I don't know.
And selling it or using it. That would make much more sense.
You never really hear about marijuana coming from Argentina, so I don't know.
Who knows?
Hey, maybe the mice did eat it.
Maybe they did. Maybe May 8th, 4th, they'll just say, "Wow, look at all this evidence we found."
Hey, when you give a mouse a cookie, there you go.
It goes and eats marijuana.
Exactly. When you give a mouse a cookie, it gets, I should say, when mice eat half ton of marijuana, they get munchies, and then they want to go get another cookie. So,
but yeah, this is just like the weirdest story that I saw all week, so we had to throw it on there. But yeah, that's the show for this week. We covered a lot of stuff in a pretty short amount of time.
These episodes we've been covering more. We've been getting more in depth. We've also been making it a little bit shorter, and I think that they've been going really well. Today's episode, I think, did pretty good.
Yeah, I think we had a pretty good show this week.
Is there anything that you want to, say here as we close out the program today?
Just the thing that I've said many times before in the program, that is, all we ask of you is to recommend the show to one other person. If everyone that listened to the show just referred one other person to, listen to the podcast, the growth that, we'll see from that is tremendous. And, download numbers right now have been pretty good.
Yeah.
They've been higher, but things are trending up, and we just like to see that continue.
Yeah.
So if you appreciate what we do, we just recommend it to someone else.
And, I don't really have anything else to say besides the normal things that I always say, which is, If you're not following us on social media pages, please go ahead and do it. You can find a link to our Facebook page down in the description box of this episode. If you want to, you can follow us on gab.ai at Trump_Republic_radio.
Do.
Yeah, or you can email us at trumppublicradio@gmail.com if you want to, directly contact us there, or, contact us on any of those other platforms. That's good too.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing I have to say is we're looking to do a midweek show, but we don't know what we're going to do it over yet at all. So, if you have any ideas, contact us on, Facebook, Gab, or, email us, and we'll give it consideration.
Absolutely.
But with that said, thank you for listening to another episode of Trump Public Radio, and have a good one.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. That turned out very well.
It did. I'm very, very
pleased with how that went.
Let's see how long it ends up.